We are learning more about the victims of Monday's boat fire off the coast of California. 33 of 34 bodies have now been recovered from the sunken wreckage off Santa Cruz Island. Meg Oliver reports.
Today, investigators boarded the Conception sister ships in Santa Barbara Harbor to learn the layout of the now destroyed 75-foot vessel as we learn more about those victims.
How many family members did you have on that dive boat?
5.
5. Has that sunk in yet?
Here and there, on and off, minute to minute. You believe it, you don't believe it.
On board when the Conception burned were Dominic Selga's mother, 3 stepsisters, and his stepfather. At a Northern California salon, 52-year-old Lisa Fiedler's grief-stricken co-workers closed their shop this morning. Raymond Chan inspired high school students in his AP physics classes in Fremont and died with his 26-year-old daughter, Kendra. Daniel Garcia worked at Apple as an engineer in Cupertino. The company also reported the loss of Steve Salika, another engineer, saying Steve was a 30-year Apple veteran whose energy and enthusiasm touched so many people. Balloons outside his Santa Cruz home commemorated him, as well as his wife and their daughter. In Stockton, there were white ribbons in Dominic Selga's neighborhood.
If there was one thing that you could say to your mom, what would it be?
If there was one thing I could say to my mom, I love you, and that's it. I love you. Miss you.
CBS News has learned that investigators interviewed the crew today and met with family members of the victims. As for Dominic's family, this dive trip was an annual adventure to celebrate his stepfather's birthday. Elaine, Michael Kittisall would have turned 61 years old today.
Heartbreaking. Meg Oliver, thank you. As part of its investigation, the NTSB says it is also investigating the other 2 ships owned by Truth Aquatics. That's the company that owned and operated Conception.
Vision is a similar vessel. It's not a sister vessel. It's not the exact replica, but it is a similar vessel to Conception. And what that means is some things may be arranged differently, but it's pretty close. And I wanted to lay eyes on the vessel and just get a sense of the layout.
Joining me now from Charleston, West Virginia, is Eric Douglas. He is a longtime diver and scuba dive instructor. Thank you so much, Eric, for being with us.
Thank you.
You have dived on one of the other boats being investigated by the NTSB. Can you give our audience a general layout of the inside of a ship like this?
Sure. The whole back half of the boat, the stern of the boat, is what we call the dive deck. That's where the tanks and the dive gear all remains. Usually just forward of that is the galley area, where the divers all congregate between dives and after dives in the evenings to relax and eat. I'll say every live-aboard dive boat like this I've ever been on has spectacular food.
You get some fresh fish.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
right.
One of the selling points of being out on a boat like that.
Yeah.
Below deck, the pictures you're showing now, below deck are bunks. There's usually a couple staterooms, but most of the divers will sleep in bunks. There are 2 or 3 tall. They're really just designed as a place to sleep. You're not out there to spend much time in your room by yourself. You're there to enjoy the company of other divers, to have fun, and you know, between dives you're talking about your diving. You're discussing what you saw and making plans for the dives, the next dives you'll do.
So, you know, it's interesting, Eric. I have my scuba certification. I've never been on a live-aboard. However, I'm kind of familiar with how they operate generally. I wonder what your thoughts are. As someone who has worked in the scuba diving industry for 20 years, what are your immediate reactions to what happened?
It was the first reports I heard Monday morning were just heartbreaking. I was sick to my stomach. It was unreal because, I mean, there but for the grace of God, me or any one of my friends could have been out there on that dive boat. It's a beautiful way to go diving. You literally you walk upstairs, you have something to eat, and then you go fall in the water. They move the boat every so often, and you have a new dive site. So it's such an amazing way to experience the water. The Channel Islands out there in California are spectacular. That's one of my favorite places to go diving in the whole world, and I've had the good fortune of diving in a number of places, but I love the Southern California diving in the Channel Islands.
Yeah.
So it was just heart-wrenching to hear those initial reports of the accident.
What about the number of people that were on this trip? How common is that? Because, you know, with these liveaboards, I'm not sure that I've heard quite as many people. I mean, perhaps that is more common in some places, but, you know, some people were remarking that that seems like a large number of folks to have on a liveaboard.
It does seem like a large number, but I'll be honest, I'm not an expert on that, but I'm sure that they are regularly inspected by the Coast Guard, and I'm sure they would not have any more passengers than the Coast Guard would allow. It does seem like a lot, but it is what I'm sure the Coast Guard watches that very closely and wouldn't allow any more people on board than safety would allow.
So I know with recreational diving there is this culture of safety. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that's something that I know is very important. It's emphasized with these pre-dive briefings that they go through once the diver is in the water, exactly what's going to happen. But can you talk about perhaps how this might change the conversation around safety for divers moving forward?
Oh, well, you mean for divers in general, or for specific to diving on boats and liveaboards?
And liveabourds, I mean, and
Okay.
even in general,
Yeah.
because, you know, fires can happen on any kind of vessel.
Well, sure, absolutely. Generally speaking, we have day boats, which are charter boats that you'll get on in the morning. You make 2 or 3 dives, and then the boat will return to the dock. Or the liveaboard dive boats like this. You'll see these in the Caribbean. You'll see these in the Red Sea. You'll see them all over the world. Similar boats. Generally, I don't think there's a lot of attention paid to fire hazards. I'm not saying they don't worry about it, but your primary worry on a especially a liveaboard boat would of course be a problem with the boat and the boat sinking. So you're going to have an emphasis on life jackets and what to do in case of an emergency, where to congregate. My guess is as after the NTSB finishes their investigation and we learn a better idea of what happened on board, that there will be a renewed emphasis on what to do in case of a fire. It's likely that they'll up the requirements for fire suppression systems, both in the galley and below decks. I don't know if these boats had carbon monoxide detectors on them, but maybe that'll be a new requirement. So I'm sure we'll learn lessons from this, and I'm sure we'll put those into play to make diving that much safer. I mean, this is a once in a million accident to begin with. It's not. I can't think of anything any similarity to this ever happening before.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll learn from this and make it just that much safer.
So many open questions still with this investigation. Eric
Absolutely.
Douglas for us. Eric, thanks very much for sharing your perspective.
Thank you.